The relationship between Russia and Burkina Faso has emerged as one of the most dynamic geopolitical partnerships in West Africa, driven by the bold vision of Burkina Faso's interim president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Since seizing power in a September 2022 coup, the 37-year-old military leader has steered his nation away from its historical ties with former colonial power France, forging a strategic alliance with Russia that spans military, economic, and ideological domains. This shift, rooted in Traoré's Pan-Africanist rhetoric and anti-imperialist stance, has captured the imagination of many across Africa and beyond, while raising concerns among Western powers about Russia's growing influence in the Sahel. Ibrahim Traoré, a young military officer with a background in geology and anti-aircraft training, assumed leadership of Burkina Faso on September 30, 2022, after ousting Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba in a coup d'état. Damiba himself had come to power 8 months earlier by overthrowing President Roch Kaboré, citing the government's failure to address a worsening jihadist insurgency that has plagued Burkina Faso since 2015. Traoré, then 34, justified his takeover by pointing to the same security crisis, promising to restore stability and reclaim national sovereignty. His ascent marked a turning point, not only for Burkina Faso but for its international alignments. Traoré's disillusionment with Western partners, particularly France, was evident from the outset. Burkina Faso, like many Francophone African nations, had maintained close military and economic ties with France, its former colonizer. French troops were stationed in the country to assist in counter-terrorism operations against jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. However, growing anti-French sentiment, fueled by perceptions of neo-colonialism and France's inability to curb the insurgency, created fertile ground for Traoré's rhetoric. In February 2023, his government expelled French forces, ending a decades-long military presence. Traoré declared that Burkina Faso would look at other horizons for win-win partnerships, signaling an openness to new allies. Russia, eager to expand its influence in Africa amid its own geopolitical tensions with the West, seized the opportunity. The Kremlin had already been cultivating ties with African nations through arms deals, mercenary deployments, and economic agreements, particularly in the Sahel. Burkina Faso's pivot aligned perfectly with Moscow's strategy to counter Western dominance in the region. As Traoré's supporters cheered in the streets of Ouagadougou, some waving Russian flags, the stage was set for a burgeoning partnership. The first significant milestone in Russia-Burkina Faso relations under Traoré came in July 2023, when he attended the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. Meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin, Traoré expressed solidarity with Russia, noting that the Burkinabe people supported Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine. The summit provided a platform for discussing bilateral cooperation, with Traoré advocating for the reopening of the Russian embassy in Ouagadougou, which had been closed since 1992. Putin agreed, and the decision was formalized later that year, marking a symbolic restoration of diplomatic ties. Speculation about Russian military involvement in Burkina Faso intensified during this period. Reports from Reuters and the New York Times suggested that Traoré might be collaborating with the Wagner Group, a Russian mercenary organization known for its operations in Mali and other African countries. The Ghanaian government publicly alleged that Traoré had enlisted Wagner mercenaries to combat jihadist rebels, a claim that resonated with Western fears of Russia's expanding footprint. However, in May 2023, Le Monde reported that Traoré's regime was primarily relying on its own forces, with no formal request for Wagner's assistance at the time. This ambiguity fueled debates about the extent of Russian involvement, but Traoré's pro-Russian rhetoric and anti-French stance left little doubt about his strategic direction. In September 2023, a Russian delegation led by Deputy Defense Minister Yunusbek Yevkarov visited Burkina Faso, following up on the St. Petersburg talks. The Burkinabe presidency announced that the discussions focused on military cooperation, including the training of Burkinabe officer cadets, officers, and pilots in Russia. While no specifics were disclosed about Russian troop deployments, the visit underscored Moscow's commitment to supporting Traoré's regime. By January 2024, Russian troops, including Wagner Group personnel, were confirmed to be in Burkina Faso, assisting in counter-terrorism efforts and providing security for the junta. Beyond security, Traoré and Putin have sought to deepen economic and humanitarian ties. Burkina Faso, one of the world's poorest nations despite its rich gold deposits, has long struggled with economic dependency on Western aid and resource extraction by foreign companies. Traoré's revolution emphasizes economic sovereignty, with policies aimed at maximizing national control over mineral wealth. In November 2023, his government approved the construction of Burkina Faso's first gold refinery, a move designed to process gold domestically rather than exporting unrefined ore. The refinery, expected to produce 400 kilograms of gold daily, is projected to create thousands of jobs and boost government revenue. Russian companies have been integrated into this vision. In April 2025, Russian miner Nordgold was granted a license for new investments in Burkina Faso's gold industry, albeit under Traoré's requirement that foreign firms cede a 15% stake to the state and train local workers. This arrangement reflects Traoré's pragmatic approach. While aligning with Russia, he insists on terms that prioritize Burkinabe interests. Meanwhile, Western mining companies, such as Australia's Surama Resources and London-based Endeavour Mining, have faced challenges, with licenses revoked and mines nationalized, highlighting the junta's selective partnerships. Russia has also provided humanitarian aid to bolster its image in Burkina Faso. In 2024, Moscow shipped 25,000 tons of wheat free of charge, followed by additional food shipments in May 2025. These gestures, while modest compared to Western aid programs, resonate with Traoré's narrative of Russia as a reliable partner unencumbered by colonial baggage. Cooperation in healthcare and education is another area of focus. In April 2025, Russian official Anna Popova visited Ouagadougou to discuss joint scientific research, laboratory development, and specialist training. Traoré has called for Russian universities to open branches in Burkina Faso, emphasizing the need to educate young Burkinabes in science and technology to drive industrialization. The Russia-Burkina Faso relationship is underpinned by a shared anti-imperialist ideology. Traoré, often compared to Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara, frames the jihadist insurgency as a product of Western imperialism, accusing foreign powers of perpetuating conflict to plunder Africa's resources. In a May 2025 meeting with Putin in Moscow, Traoré declared, "The terrorism we are witnessing today comes from imperialism, and we are fighting it." Putin echoed this sentiment, pledging to support Burkina Faso in combating radical groups and restoring constitutional order. Traoré's visit to Moscow for the 80th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in May 2025 was a high-profile affirmation of this alliance. Accompanied by military leaders from Mali and Niger, fellow members of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Traoré posted on X that the event inspired them to pursue victory against terrorism and imperialism at all costs. The AES, formed in 2024 by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger after their withdrawal from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, reflects a broader regional shift toward Russia and away from Western influence. The trio's plan to introduce a new currency to replace the CFA franc, seen as a symbol of French monetary control, further underscores their quest for sovereignty. Traoré's charisma and social media presence have amplified the partnership's appeal. His messages of self-reliance and Pan-Africanism resonate with African youth disillusioned by poverty and Western interventions. A slick social media campaign, allegedly boosted by Russian disinformation expertise, has portrayed Traoré as a messianic figure, with AI-generated content and misleading claims, such as Burkina Faso paying off its sovereign debt or developing electric cars, circulating widely. While critics argue that this propaganda distracts from Burkina Faso's worsening security crisis, supporters view Traoré as a symbol of resistance against neo-colonialism. The deepening Russia-Burkina Faso alliance has not gone unnoticed by Western powers, particularly the United States and France. In April 2025, U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, Commander General Michael Langley accused Traoré of using nationalized gold reserves to protect his junta rather than benefit the nation, implying Russian involvement in exchange for gold concessions. The remark sparked outrage among Traoré's supporters, who accused the U.S. of smearing their leader. The situation escalated when Burkina Faso's junta claimed to have foiled a coup plot orchestrated from Ivory Coast, a U.S. and French ally, shortly after Langley's visit to the country. These incidents have fueled Traoré's narrative of Western conspiracies against his regime. France, meanwhile, has struggled to counter its declining influence in the Sahel. French President Emmanuel Macron has criticized Traoré as part of a Baroque alliance between self-proclaimed Pan-Africans and neo-imperialists, reflecting Paris's frustration with Russia's gains. The expulsion of French troops and the nationalization of Western-owned mines have strained relations further, with France increasing aid and cultural initiatives in other African countries to regain goodwill. Despite the momentum, the Russia-Burkina Faso partnership faces significant challenges. The jihadist insurgency, which Traoré vowed to quell, has worsened under his rule. Data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, ACLD, shows that deaths from violence by government and armed groups more than doubled from 2,894 in the year before the 2022 coup to 7,200 in the past year. Human Rights Watch has documented atrocities by Burkinabe forces, including a 2023 massacre in Yatenga province that killed over 156 civilians, undermining Traoré's claims of restoring security. Economic reforms, while ambitious, are fraught with risks. The gold refinery and nationalization policies aim to reduce dependency on foreign firms, but inefficiencies and corruption, common pitfalls in African state-owned enterprises, could derail progress. Traoré's rejection of International Monetary Fund and World Bank assistance, while popular among his base, limits access to capital needed for infrastructure and development. Russia's economic support, though growing, remains modest compared to Western aid, with trade between the two nations valued at just $1.02 million in January 2022. Moreover, Traoré's extended transition plan, which could keep him in power until 2029, has raised concerns about democratic backsliding. While a 2024 Afrobarometer survey shows 66% of Burkinabes support his military rule, critics warn that his cult of personality, fueled by Russian-backed propaganda, could entrench authoritarianism. The foiled coup attempt in April 2025, one of several since 2022, highlights the fragility of his regime and the potential for external or internal destabilization. As Ibrahim Traoré and Vladimir Putin continue to strengthen their ties, the Russia-Burkina Faso relationship stands at a critical juncture. For Traoré, Russia offers military support, economic opportunities, and ideological validation in his quest to redefine Burkina Faso's place in the world. For Putin, Burkina Faso is a strategic foothold in the Sahel, a region rich in resources and ripe for influence amid Western setbacks. The partnership has already reshaped Burkina Faso's foreign policy, inspired regional allies, and sparked global debates about sovereignty and imperialism. Yet, the alliance is far from fully realized. Questions linger about Russia's long-term commitment, the sustainability of Traoré's reforms, and the impact on Burkina Faso's security and development. As the young leader navigates these complexities, the world watches closely, wondering whether this bold experiment will deliver on its promises or falter under the weight of its ambitions. As the partnership between Russia and Burkina Faso under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership continues to deepen, its implications extend far beyond bilateral ties, reshaping geopolitical dynamics in the Sahel and bolstering the ambitions of both nations. For Burkina Faso, Russia represents a critical ally in its quest for security, economic sovereignty, and regional influence through the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. For Russia, Burkina Faso is a linchpin in its broader African strategy, offering access to resources, a platform to counter Western dominance, and a model for expanding influence across the continent. The AES, comprising Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, amplifies these dynamics, positioning the bloc as a counterweight to Western-aligned regional organizations and a testing ground for Russia's vision of a multipolar world. For Burkina Faso, the alliance with Russia has become a cornerstone of Traoré's vision to reclaim national sovereignty and address long-standing challenges. The country, grappling with a jihadist insurgency that has displaced over 2 million people and killed thousands, sees Russia as a reliable military partner. Since 2023, Russian military advisors, including personnel from the Wagner Group's successor entities like the Africa Corps, have provided training, equipment, and intelligence support to Burkinabe forces. Unlike Western interventions, which were often criticized for restrictive rules of engagement, Russian assistance comes with fewer political strings, allowing Traoré's government greater operational autonomy. In June 2025, a Russian shipment of advanced drones and anti-aircraft systems was reported by local media, enhancing Burkina Faso's capacity to target jihadist strongholds in the north and east. Economically, Russia's involvement has bolstered Traoré's push for resource nationalism. The 2023 gold refinery project, partially financed by Russian loans and technical expertise, is a flagship initiative. By processing gold domestically, Burkina Faso aims to retain more value from its estimated 600 tons of annual gold exports, which account for over 50% of its GDP. Russian firms like Nordgold have committed to joint ventures under Traoré's terms, which mandate state ownership and local workforce development. These deals have increased government revenue, enabling investments in infrastructure and social programs, such as the 2024 Sovereign Schools initiative to promote technical education. In a July 2025 speech, Traoré credited Russia's non-exploitative partnership model for enabling Burkina Faso to stand tall economically. The relationship also elevates Burkina Faso's regional stature through the AES. Formed in September 2024, the AES unites Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in a mutual defense and economic pact, explicitly rejecting Western influence and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Traoré has positioned Burkina Faso as the ideological heart of the AES, leveraging Russia's support to project strength. Russian military trainers have conducted joint exercises with AES forces, fostering interoperability among the three nations' armies. In March 2025, a trilateral summit in Niamey, attended by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, resulted in agreements for a shared intelligence network to combat jihadist threats, with Russia providing satellite imagery and cybersecurity expertise. Ideologically, Russia's backing amplifies Traoré's Pan-Africanist narrative. His frequent references to Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader assassinated in 1987, resonate with a generation seeking liberation from neo-colonial structures. Russian state media, including RT and Sputnik, have amplified Traoré's speeches on platforms like X, portraying him as a champion of African sovereignty. This propaganda support has helped Traoré maintain domestic legitimacy, with a 2025 poll by the Pan-African Research Institute showing 72% approval for his foreign policy. By aligning with Russia, Traoré positions Burkina Faso as a leader in the Sahel's anti-imperialist movement, inspiring similar shifts in neighboring countries. For Russia, Burkina Faso is a strategic gateway to the Sahel, a region rich in gold, uranium, and lithium, and a battleground for global influence. The partnership allows Moscow to challenge the West's historical dominance in Africa, particularly France's sway in Francophone countries. By supporting Traoré's junta, Russia gains a foothold in a geopolitically sensitive region, where it can disrupt Western supply chains for critical minerals. Burkina Faso's gold, for instance, has become a lifeline for Russia's economy, strained by Western sanctions over Ukraine. In 2024, reports from the Financial Times indicated that Russian firms were purchasing Burkinabe gold at discounted rates, helping Moscow circumvent restrictions on its global trade. The military dimension is equally significant. Burkina Faso serves as a hub for Russia's Africa Corps, which has replaced the Wagner Group in coordinating operations across the Sahel. The presence of Russian advisors in Ouagadougou strengthens Moscow's ability to project power, countering US and French military bases in neighboring countries like Ivory Coast and Senegal. A June 2025 post on X by a Russian defense analyst claimed that Burkina Faso's strategic location could host a Russian logistics base, facilitating operations in Mali and Niger. While unconfirmed, such a move would align with Russia's ambition to create a network of military outposts in Africa, mirroring its bases in Syria and the Central African Republic. Economically, Burkina Faso offers Russia opportunities to expand its market share in Africa. Beyond gold, Russian companies are eyeing Burkina Faso's agricultural sector, with plans to export fertilizers and machinery in exchange for cocoa and cotton. A 2025 trade agreement increased bilateral trade to $50 million, a significant jump from $1.02 million in 2022, though still modest compared to China's $700 million trade with Burkina Faso. Russia's state-owned Rosatom has also expressed interest in building a nuclear power plant in Burkina Faso, a project discussed during Traoré's May 2025 Moscow visit. Such a facility would address Burkina Faso's chronic energy shortages while cementing Russia's role as a long-term partner. Politically, Burkina Faso's alignment bolsters Russia's narrative of a multipolar world. By showcasing Traoré's government as a success story, Moscow counters Western criticism of its African engagements as exploitative. At the 2025 Russia-Africa Summit, Putin highlighted Burkina Faso as a model of sovereign development, contrasting it with Western-backed regimes accused of perpetuating dependency. This messaging resonates across Africa, where Russia has secured partnerships with over 20 countries since 2019. Burkina Faso's vocal support for Russia's actions in Ukraine, reiterated by Traoré on X in June 2025, further aligns the two nations against a common Western adversary. The AES is a critical multiplier for the Russia-Burkina Faso partnership, transforming bilateral ties into a regional strategy. For Burkina Faso, the AES provides a platform to assert leadership in the Sahel, challenging ECOWAS's authority. The bloc's Mutual Defense Pact, signed in 2024, commits Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to joint counter-terrorism operations, with Russian support enhancing their capabilities. In April 2025, AES forces conducted their first joint operation in the tri-border region, reportedly disrupting a jihadist supply route with Russian-supplied drones. This success, widely publicized by AES media, strengthened the bloc's credibility and Traoré's reputation as a regional strongman. For Russia, the AES offers a unified front to expand its influence. By engaging the three nations collectively, Moscow avoids the logistical challenges of negotiating separate deals. Russian military instructors operate across AES countries, standardizing training and equipment to create a cohesive anti-Western bloc. A May 2025 agreement established an AES-Russian Economic Forum, aimed at attracting Russian investment in mining, energy, and agriculture. Rosatom's proposed nuclear projects in Niger and Burkina Faso, discussed at the forum, could position Russia as the Sahel's primary energy partner, rivaling China's infrastructure dominance. The AES also serves as a diplomatic shield for its members. When ECOWAS imposed sanctions on Niger after its 2023 coup, Russia provided humanitarian aid and diplomatic backing, enabling the AES to withstand regional isolation. Traoré's government has leveraged this support to push for a new Sahel currency, tentatively called the Sahel dinar, to replace the CFA franc. While the currency remains in planning stages as of August 2025, Russian economists have advised on its implementation, drawing on Moscow's experience with de-dollarization. If successful, the currency could reduce French economic influence and enhance Russia's soft power. The Russia-Burkina Faso partnership, amplified through the AES, has reshaped the Sahel's geopolitical landscape. For Burkina Faso, it offers a path to security and economic autonomy, though at the cost of alienating Western partners and risking over-reliance on Russia. The insurgency remains a formidable challenge, with ACLED reporting a 20% increase in jihadist attacks in 2025 compared to 2024. Russian support has improved Burkinabe military capabilities, but the lack of a comprehensive strategy to address the insurgency's root causes, poverty, ethnic tensions, and governance failures, limits progress. For Russia, the partnership yields strategic gains but carries risks. The Sahel's volatility, marked by coups and insurgencies, could destabilize Moscow's allies. Traoré's regime, while popular, faces internal dissent, with a June 2025 protest in Ouagadougou demanding elections. Russia's ability to sustain economic support is also constrained by its own sanctions-hit economy, raising questions about the longevity of its commitments. The AES, while promising, faces hurdles in coordination and resource allocation. Disparities between Burkina Faso's gold wealth, Niger's uranium reserves, and Mali's agricultural base complicate economic integration. Moreover, the bloc's anti-Western stance has strained relations with neighbors like Ghana and Ivory Coast, risking regional conflict. Russia's role as a mediator and backer will be critical to the AES's cohesion, but its capacity to manage these dynamics remains untested. The Russia-Burkina Faso alliance, woven into the fabric of the AES, has far-reaching implications. For Burkina Faso, it is a bold gamble to redefine its destiny, with Traoré leveraging Russian support to pursue a vision of sovereignty and regional leadership. For Russia, it is a strategic triumph, positioning Moscow as a key player in the Sahel and a champion of anti-Western sentiment. The AES amplifies these ambitions, offering a model for collective resistance against external influence. As this partnership evolves, it continues to challenge global power dynamics, drawing the attention of policymakers from Washington to Paris to Beijing.